Okay, this is a cappuccino spout of an M50/M49 and sometimes a M50C200. Anyway, the spout cover is removable. There is a magnetic catch here. And it gets pulled off and cleaned separately. This particular style is the adjustable temperature on the top. Okay, so we have the milk inlet hose, which goes in here, and as you can see it says milk, and then steam, which is here. Okay, now what happens is a steam jet gets jet down into the spout, and it's surrounded by milk. It actually passes through the milk, and as the steam gets injected down, it creates a low pressure area, so the milk gets sucked in, and then the outer pressure, atmospheric pressure, presses the milk up into the hose. So that's how it sucks up milk into the system. Then it sprays down in here into a mixing chamber, rotates around, and eventually comes out through these two ports as froth milk. Now, depending if there's a lot of cold milk coming in here, that means there's cold froth coming out here. But if the milk is minimized through a pinching device, it slows down the cold milk hitting the steam. So the steam has more of a chance to increase the temperature of the milk to the desired temperature. And it gets hot enough to actually even cook the milk. And then it all comes out of here, out of this frother. Now there's two nozzles because this allows the machine to make two drinks at the same time. But it's narrow enough that it would fit a cup where you could pour all the milk into one cup. So you have a choice here, okay? In addition to that, there is coffee that's inserted here, and it's a separate chamber. It doesn't get mixed with the milk. So as you can see through all the coffee stains, that the milk just goes into this chamber. It doesn't do anything other than split and then separate into two spouts. And the two spouts are the same idea, so you could pour two drinks at the same time, or narrow enough that it would go into one drink. Okay? So this particular model is a modification from the M21 Junior, where the frother temperature was controlled up here. So this limited the amount of milk that was allowed to hit the steam. So by adjusting this would raise or lower the milk insert, well, the steam insert into the milk chamber, which would then cause the milk to cool or heat up. Okay? This was later dropped, this style was later dropped because every time you cleaned it, you had to take this apart by removing the screw all the way. Like so. And as you remove the screw, since you removed it, now you canceled the adjustment. So when you cleaned it and you put it back, you had to recalibrate it again, right? Which is not that hard to do if you know what you're doing. It's very, very fast. It only takes you about 30 seconds to calibrate this. So it wasn't that big a deal, but for new operators, it was. Every time they cleaned it, they knew that they would have to recalibrate it. And if they're not familiar with recalibration, it was kind of a problem for them. It was a challenge, okay? So one of the issues about the frother was cleaning. And gee, I haven't taken this apart in years, so it's a little okay. Yeah, it's been in there for a while. Okay, and it's usually a one-way twist with a pin going down the center so that you would not okay, and as you can see, even though this machine was clean when it was put away, it dries out. The O-ring is dry. Like, this is really, really dry. There's no grease on it at all. Okay, and this machine was clean before it was put away. So as you can see, there is some residue, but not that much. Okay, and there's a hole there. And so as you can see, when it's in this, the milk goes in here and swirls around in here and gets shot out through the steam. And the steam is injected into the milk, and all here is all crusted milk. So even after it's cleaned, it's still really hard to get the milk off. You have to really scrub it and soak it for a long time. So, and there's the inner chamber right here. Okay. The lines are somewhat for an idea of where the position of the adjustment is. It's more of a guideline. It's not really, there's no zero marks or any numbers here. It's just to give you an idea. Okay, if you set it there, then you know somewhere around there it's going to be in that ballpark. What I usually do for this type of valve is tighten it all the way down, and open it up at least a full turn, and then see where you're at. And then from there, you either open it up for more colder froth or tighten it down for hotter froth. Okay, so it gets you in the ballpark. But if you remember to go all the way down and then open up one turn, then you can go from there. Okay, so that's the fastest way to calibrate it. Okay, now as far as the rest of the frother goes, this is an air intake, which allows air to mix inside of this chamber. Okay, and as the air mixes, it determines how big the froth foam is. So the more air going in will create bigger bubbles, and the less air going in, or no air at all, would create just hot milk. So in the case of a latte, you don't want any air going in, you just want hot milk. Okay, and there's a hose similar to this, except it's smaller. And then there's a adjustment valve, a needle valve, to allow a certain amount of air to go in here. Okay. So the air comes down, mixes in, along with the hot milk and the steam, shooting down into the chamber, and it gets mixed into here. Okay, now this is attached. And as you can see, there's a little hole for where all the milk, air, and steam would go right into here. And there's two O-rings to keep it sealed. Now, this splits open. There is an inlet for the coffee, like I mentioned before, which goes in a separate chamber. You'll be able to see it right now. Okay, so this is the collar. Okay. And then there's the housing for the dome. Okay. Now, if you notice, the housing has a separate pin, and it needs to line up. It needs to line up with the pin here. Okay. On that way, it keeps it orientated. The reason for that is this thing is, as you can see, it's off to one side, so it's not dead center. And as you can see, there's locking slots here to keep it on there. So when you put it on, this has to be facing the back. So this has to be orientated a certain way. So you put it on at a 90-degree angle, and then you lock it down, and then it locks in on these tabs. Okay, and then the coffee is pointed directly at the machine, as well as the air hose coming off to the right side, and steam coming down right through the center. Okay, So this is the housing. This is the dome. I'm not too sure what this does. It will operate without it, so it's not a big deal. It doesn't seem to affect what goes on in the frother other than it slows down the froth before it gets down to the, because otherwise it would just go straight down. Okay. Now I've seen these machines operated without these domes, so I'm sure there's some reason for it, like a mixing or hold back like a back pressure, like a muffler. But the domes come in various configurations, like this one with the hole on the top, and this is the first time I noticed it. There's a channel on the side. I've never noticed that before. I don't think this is very common. Okay, so anyway, that's the dome, and then in here, there's another holdback device which separates. It prevents the coffee from mixing with the milk. So it's, you can see it. Here's the coffee side, here's the milk. Okay, and you see that it keeps it separate. Okay, this particular one is, it has a rounded edge on the bottom side. That's another thing. I've never seen that. Usually this is squared off, so there's a better seal. So this is another variation that's not that common. The pins are necessary to keep it aligned so that this doesn't twirl around and mix coffee stains with the milk stains. There are discs without these pins that come from the M49 frother. And yeah, it will work, but it's better to have the pins in so it doesn't allow coffee that squirts in here to mix in with the milk, because they need to be delivered separately, because they're delivered at different times and they're never delivered together. Okay, because that's the difference between main difference between a latte and a cappuccino, whereas one, the coffee comes first and then the milk, and then another version, the milk comes first and then the coffee. So it's really important that the coffee and milk is separate. Okay, so as you can see with this, coffee does get into the threads. You can drop this whole assembly into warm soapy mixture and leave it overnight, and that makes it easier, because stuff like the nozzle that gets all crusted up with milk is easy to take apart. Now this particular model has a pull off quick disconnect coffee hose connector. So there's a real large hole, makes it easier for cleaning. You can get a brush in there and clean up. Okay, the newer models don't have this. They just have this item. And with a quick, you can press down on this and the hose quickly disconnects. So there's variations of these connectors, but nowadays it's just a hose that connects. There's not that much pressure coming out of here. It's just the exit port of the coffee, which is not really under, even though it could be under 9 bar, but because there's nothing holding it back, it just comes straight out. So there's hardly any pressure at all. Okay, so the reassembly is you line up these two pins with the coffee hole. So you can't really put it in backwards because, see, it doesn't fit. Okay, so line up the two pins right there. Drop in your dome. And in this particular case, there is a slot for the dome. So the dome has to orientate a certain way. Okay, and then you drop in the pin here. Okay, now if you don't have any of these items, the pin or the dome slot, don't worry about it, because that model probably doesn't use it. Okay, and here's the collar, and make sure everything's locked in place. Okay, and then you come down on it. Okay, this part you have to kind of keep an eye on it. Make sure the threads are clean. Otherwise, you might end up cross-threading it. And though the collar is replaceable, and this would be mounted on the machine, there's 2 screws that hold it. Okay, and they would have the air holes and, of course, the steam line connected. This would be on the machine. And you just put it in, you line it up. Okay, so as you're looking at it at the machine, the coffee hose is on the left. It lines up, okay? So you see these slats and line up. So you press this in, and then you turn it back to that position where the coffee is facing the machine. So here's the coffee line. Here's the milk line, which goes into your milk, and then your steam line. Now, there is a pinching device, as I mentioned earlier. Let's see if I have it. Oh, okay. Here's the pinching. Here's the milk pinching device. All it is a tube, hard tube. Ow. And then it goes over the milk hose, and then by turning this knob, you pinch down on the hose. And the way I set this is you go all the way down till it stops. Don't crank it full hard because you'll puncture the hose, but just enough that where it stops like that, and then you open it up 3 times, okay? And that will get you in the ballpark, okay? You may need to open it up another half turn or close it down a little, but depending on the steam and the milk temperature. Now, make sure the milk temperature is at least 40 degrees or lower. It should be at 38, but no higher than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so this is the milk pinch line. It controls the temperature, but also in this particular model, because it has an adjustment here, you don't need this. Okay, this will pinch down the milk by itself in the chamber. So one less item to worry about, okay? But on the machines that don't have this adjustment, you use this to adjust the temperature, okay? And here's an example of, this one has a slot in it, but the slot's a little different. This slot is designed for a pin, not for that head. In fact, this probably won't fit this, okay? And then here's another milk disc. Like I said, it's more common to the M20, M21. Auto frother, which is an option attachment frother. It's a little smaller than this head. The coffee doesn't go through the M20 frother. It's just a basic frother that just froths milk. It replaces the steam one for customers who have challenges with frothing milk. So with the auto frother, which is smaller than this, as you can see, this is smaller. You just turn on the steam on, and the steam goes right in. It picks up the milk, froths it, and that's it. The only situation with the M20 frother is it doesn't really do latte. What you have to do is you have to froth the whole thing in a pitcher and then separate the froth from the milk to get your latte. So that was a little bit added work. But for the froth challenged operator, this was actually the best solution. Okay. So this is the M50 or M49 auto frother combination milk dispenser. Some other models, earlier models, they had the actual coffee dispensed separately from this. So this is a newer version where the coffee and the milk are combined, so there's less mechanics and less parts. Where instead of having 2 separate heads, where you would have to put the cappuccino cup to get a coffee dose and then move it over to the milk frother to get a froth dose, froth milk dose. So that's the difference. This one combines it together. So this head can make, besides making standard espresso drinks, it can make cappuccino, and because of timing and dispensing options that are available on the M50, it could dose the coffee before or after the milk was frothed to determine whether you're making a cappuccino or a latte, or even a macchiato, which is coffee and then a froth foam mix doubled on top. So you could do all of that, all the drinks with this one head. So that's the purpose of this. Okay. So recap: auto adjustment milk temperature, which was later replaced with just a standard drop-in nozzle that's non-adjustable. You just press it in. And then adjusting the milk with the milk adjuster pinch tube. Okay, so that was easier for operators. So that's what they went with. And then the rest of the frother is pretty much the same. The only difference is separate chambers for coffee and milk, and the double spout, so you could do 2 cups at the same, 2 separate drinks at the same, 2 common drinks at the same time. Okay, as long as this head was balanced. If it was tilted to one side, naturally coffee and milk would go more on this drink, this cup, and if it's tilted to that side, same thing would happen. So this is critical for this head to be balanced, the machine itself to be balanced, so that everything would drop evenly on both sides. And you can do that by testing with 2 shot glasses with measuring lines and see which one is leaning towards the other, and you just adjust the head. This head is slightly adjustable with the 2 screws, but in most cases you would level out the machine because you would want the base of the drip tray to be level too. Otherwise all your cups would be slanted and you'd see all your drinks would be slanted. So you want to level out the machines as level as possible. So this is the M50/M49 frother assembly.